So yeah, thank you for having me. And I think our story is best explained by starting at a problem. And this problem is also an opportunity at the same time. So there's a lot of different studies saying different numbers, but 30 billion connected devices and Internet of Things, whether they're 100 billion or 30 billion, we're going to need a lot of them. And the backbone of the Internet of Things are sensors. And if you zoom in a little bit more and you look at office buildings, for example, then we see that in European Union alone, we need about 10 million climate sensors in office buildings every year. So you build a new building, you put about 10,000 of those sensors in there. So these are things like you walk into a room, the lights go on, the air conditioning go on, stuff like that. That's all controlled by sensors. So the problem there is if you have these millions and millions of sensors, how are you going to power them? Well, you can do a few things. So traditionally, that would be cables. That's how we've been doing it for the last few decades. Problem there is that, first of all, it's not flexible. So what we see is that most buildings we have are already built, so we retrofit them. And when you're retrofitting, you have to now pull down all the walls to put new cables everywhere. That's not really an option. It's not worth it to put thousands of sensors in the building if it means practically destroying the entire building. It's also quite expensive to wire 10,000 sensors throughout a building. So this is generally not really being done anymore. What they now do is say, well, we'll just put a battery in there. So the problem there is, and we spoke to a lot of companies doing precisely this type of maintenance, is that the batteries die very quickly. So roughly this is between 6 to 18 months. And then it's quite expensive to change the batteries. So the battery itself is actually quite cheap. It's sending somebody there on a car that has to go up to a ladder, open the casing, and change the battery. He's very expensive. So that adds up to about 10 to 35 euros per battery change. And the problem there is, and this is a very important point I want to highlight quickly, is that it doesn't matter how low power the sensor is or how big you make the battery, it will still die within that time period. And the reason is that a sensor sleeps for a very long time, then it wakes up and uses some power, and then it goes to sleep again. And this is fundamentally not how batteries work. This is actually the fastest way to destroy them. So in most cases, the battery is not empty, the battery is broken. The chemistry doesn't allow for this type of usage, these high peaks and then very low currents afterwards. So we really feel we need new solutions here. So what we've developed at Nowi is Wi-Fi powered sensors. So we can actually get energy from the Wi-Fi signals that are all around us and use that to power the sensor. So your phone right now, your laptop, that Wi-Fi router over there is just continuously beaming out these electromagnetic waves. It's asking the network, do I have a new email? Do I have a new WhatsApp message? There's this continuous traffic going everywhere, and we don't see it, but these signals are everywhere, and there's a little bit of energy in them. And the same goes for 4G, for GSM signals, basically everything we use for our mobile communication. So what we do is by using these signals, we're able to create something that we call a plug-and-forget sensor. So the old paradigm has been plug and play, and we feel that needs to change to plug and forget in order for the Internet of Things to really deliver on its promise. Because you have to go back to all these millions of sensors, it's simply never going to work. So what happens if you have a plug and forget sensor? It's a sensor you can put somewhere, and you don't have to think about it anymore. You can simply forget about it. So what then happens is that you don't have to go back to it anymore either, and the cost of ownership drops dramatically. So right now, the total cost of ownership for a climate sensor in an office is around 350 euros over its lifetime. But you bought the sensor for only 50 euros to begin with. So the vast majority of those costs are actually that guy in the car that's going up the ladder and changing batteries. Right? So if you lower that cost of ownership, it becomes a lot easier to implement. So what we're doing is we're initially focusing on an indoor and outdoor version. So this is a climate sensor for in smart buildings, and an outdoor version, which I'll get back to in a little bit. And then more long-term, we're more focusing on a power module. So this is something that can be integrated in really any type of device, most likely low-power sensors, but there's an enormous amount of sensors you can make. So this is from medical devices to industrial applications. In the end of the day, we're good at making that power module, and that's what we want to help other companies in innovating. So we have our first patent on this. The second one is being filed within 2 weeks, and there's a lot of software involved in getting this to work as well. Due to time concerns, I think I'll go through this quickly. But the basic idea is what I just explained is that we're making a power module that's really integrated in other devices, and the business model there is a licensing model. So the roadmap focuses on the indoor version, and later an outdoor version, and then the power module. I think it's good to highlight the team. So as you mentioned, we are from Yes Delft. And actually, the TU Delft is one of the best in the world at doing this type of research. They have been doing this for the last 15 years. So our CTO did his PhD on that, and our advisor is the head of the Embedded Systems Lab at TU Delft as well. So very, very strong connection with that. Won a bunch of innovation awards, doing quite a few pilots at the moment, but we need more funding to keep going. Biggest things are that we want to grow the team a bit more, and we have a pipeline completely filled with new patents we want to file, but this is expensive, so we'll need a lot of money for that as well. Thank you.